Do you think it's based on leadership? So, President Donald Trump obviously has COVID or had COVID. I don't know what the situation is. You always see him during interviews not wearing masks, right? And eventually, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of discussion between people saying that maybe he actually doesn't have COVID. He just doesn't want to participate in the debate because he had bad ratings during the debate. There's a lot of rumors in that segment. But do you believe that it's based on leadership showing that example? And that's why some people just really don't care.
You are now tuning in to Kickspot with Jinu Park and Migs.
And we're back here at the Kickspot.
Season 2.
Season 2. We're excited.
Man, this is episode Jordan.
Episode
23.
23 for us.
So, this is awesome.
It's pretty exciting. And as you guys can see, we have a new location.
Boom.
A more relaxed setting because our whole purpose is that we want to get to understand people's perspectives, but also to be able to kick back at the spot.
That's what we called.
And this is the spot.
Kickspot, obviously.
So if you can see visually, we have a few guests with us.
Integrate technology.
Yes.
Hello.
And we've never had somebody from the science background.
I know, this is dope.
Migs, I actually didn't do very well in science.
Neither did I.
So this will be very, very interesting for both of us.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to ask a lot of different questions. And then we also have, and that's with Ryan. And then we also have Nak here, who's going to simplify things for us as well, too. Because some of the terminology, that's the reason why I failed science. Some of the terminology wasn't very, common in nature when I speak. So
yeah, and so Ryan is a researcher. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yes.
Perfect. And then Nak works in the, I forgot how you describe your line of work. So
Well, the simplest one right now is that I am a sound massage therapist, and I'm also an instructor in movement.
in movement, there you go. I forgot.
perfect. So Ryan, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, just so we can kind of deeper question things, especially in today's world with COVID and everything happening. We'd like to get your background first so we can dive deep into that.
Yeah. So my background is in structural biology. Essentially, what do proteins look like and how do they kind of form and do their activities? Because, they're the machines of all their cellular factories here. And specifically, I looked at how influenza or the flu virus will disrupt all of that kind of machinery and essentially take over the cell. So that was my PhD. So I did about 7 years of that. And hopefully we'll be having that PhD paper be published in the next year or so. And but currently I'm working in a cardiovascular lab at UC Davis where I look at heart disease, which is where COVID kind of comes into play because we're looking at these connections between heart disease and COVID.
Perfect. Yeah, with today's world, with COVID-19 and how it's affected our daily lives, we've been really wanting to have an episode where we can give some sort of factual information to our viewers and our listeners and give this perspective where they can kind of make decisions for themselves and learn a little bit more how that's really affecting us. And obviously that's what we're going to be giving to our audience today. And we're excited about it and we can't wait about it. So JP, we have a lot of questions today.
Yeah, so I initially thought that COVID, when someone gets affected, it's through the respiratory system. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that it also is correlated to the heart as well?
Well, so the respiratory system is the first place of infection, but the virus itself spreads throughout the body. I mean, how they actually know that some of these animals that have been infected, if you've ever heard of the reports that someone's pet got infected, was they had to test the fecal matter of the pets for the virus itself. So that's how they know that someone's been fully infected. And so the virus affects everything throughout the body. There's been reports of blood clotting to points where people have had amputations and, all this other kind of crazy stuff.
And that's because of COVID, or they also have other underlying diseases?
Well, so this kind of gets into the mechanisms of it, and so I'll have to give a brief interview, or brief, overstatement, just because we could be talking about this for 2 hours, and that's kind of what we'll eventually be doing. But essentially, the worst one of the biggest problems isn't necessarily the virus itself, but it's your immune system's response to the virus. And this is true for influenza and other respiratory viruses, is that a lot of the damage actually comes because your immune system overreacts. And this overreaction can, cause scar tissue on the heart or lung failure, or, in certain instances, blood clotting and stuff like that, which is something that we normally don't expect, but that's something unique with COVID. So it's really the immune system's response to COVID that does most of the damage.
So is that why some people are asymptomatic, because there's no impact on their body even if they get tested positive for COVID?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different reasons, and this is actually one of the reasons that COVID is so hard to get rid of, is because it is silent in a lot of people, and it's silent for so many days. It's the same reason that we're never going to get rid of HIV, because HIV can lay dormant in someone for 10 years before they start showing symptoms. So the main reason, there's several theories of why people are asymptomatic, and I kind of subscribe to it's a mixture of all of them versus one. One of the theories is that COVID itself is uniquely covered in sugars, and your body cells are covered in sugars as a way to help signal. And so by this, it's this covering of sugar means that it goes undetected by your immune system because it looks like a cell. And so it can go undetected for so long. And then if it does become, detected, sometimes the virus is rampant, and then your immune system just, goes AWOL and kind of starts attacking everything. I like to refer to it as that scene in Aliens where, the Marines are going in to, kill all the alien nests, and they don't know anything. And then it starts coming out of the walls, and they just start shooting everything, when they shouldn't, because there's a nuclear reactor above them, or, something like that. So that's the way I've been imagining this immune system response, is they don't really detect it until it's overwhelmed.
You said that you're trying to receive a grant to study COVID, or is it something related to that?
Yeah, it's something related to that. Can't really go into too many details, but it really refers to the way that the virus enters a cell is through a protein called ACE2. And so you might have heard that in the news, and it's actually very interesting because ACE2 is expressed differently in so many different people. It seems that Asian males actually have a higher expression of ACE2 than females, which is why that males tend to be more susceptible to the virus. Also, there's this very interesting story of men on prostate cancer treatment are less susceptible because of the treatment that they're on actually suppresses some of these proteins and all that. So it's really, the grant itself is looking at how these proteins that the virus used to get into the cell are regulated differently within the heart.
So, go ahead.
Is that any different than what the CDC studies?
No, well, the exact details of what I'm applying for is different because we have this hypothesis that this protein that kind of is a regulatory protein. Basically, it's like someone going through a house and turning on and off, light switches. So basically, this protein goes around and turns things on and off. And we have some evidence to show that this protein will turn on and off ACE2 in a way that might be able to help with viral infections. But there's, probably over 1,000 different studies going on right now about just ACE2. So this is just one very, very, very specific detail.
So you're obviously looking at virus, right? But
yeah.
How did you get into this field? Like, was this something that you've been wanting, like that you wanted to do? Is this like what you wanted to go to school for? Like, what piqued your interest in studying about viruses and proteins and things of that nature?
Well, so my interest actually started coming from snake venom, and Nock hates snakes, which is, very, very funny to us because we're just very different.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But yeah, snake venom is like extremely interesting. And I remember in college, just very, very early, I looked at evolution of snake venom and other venoms and stuff like that. And then that led into, venoms cause disease or, whatever. So, and it's kind of just a protein folding problem where the proteins don't actually fold correctly. Which means they can't make the correct machines. And so that led into genetic diseases. And then I was always, because I have, genetic disease with my eyes. So then I started getting very interested in just, what makes a disease succeed over others. And then that led me to viruses. So this whole study of like, well, how can a disease survive in a population is this question I've been trying to answer for over a decade.
So one of the things that Migs is very passionate about is investment in stocks recently. And
very passionate.
Very, very passionate. And there's a particular stock that he likes, which is the sports stocks. I'm very against it right now because of the fact that, I'm leading to it. Because of the fact that I liked what the NBA did with the bubble. I think that they really contained everything. But as we're starting to see that NFL players are starting to get COVID, we're also seeing that teams are starting to get COVID.
MLB players.
MLB teams
Ronaldo.
all have and it's starting to come out even more. It seems like we had contained it at a certain extent, and all of a sudden there's been a spike. I don't personally see anybody around me get COVID, but there's always a lot more announcements that are being made. And so that's why,
especially in the last 7 to 10 days.
Yeah. And so like with the sports thing, like, the Pac-12 just, I felt like they were kind of pressured to open up football season. I think they only, 8 games or whatnot. But, talk to us a little bit more about that. Like in that nature, like, is it spiking? Like, what is your perception on the sports?
So, well, this is, me, myself, I'm a big 49ers fan. So,
we're going to have to end the recording.
Well, when I was in Santa Barbara, I was a Chargers fan because, San Francisco is awful. But, we've been dumpster fire for so long. So, the last thing we had was Joe Montana and, Kaepernick. But anyways, so this was actually something that we're doing this podcast. And one of the things I really wanted to get on the episode was, on our podcast is like a sports journalist, someone that can explain the regulations and actually what they're doing. But, it was very, very difficult for me to watch, the Tennessee Titans have 13 overall? Is that how many cases they had?
It was 12 cases.
12.
Yeah.
And then like they had fans in the stadium.
Yep.
The first game back.
Yep.
And there's other teams that refuse to have stands, and it's just so that kind of disconnect. I mean, the NBA bubble worked because it was a very, very short playoff series, like 6 weeks. But for an entire season, it's going to be impossible. And even Roger Goodell said, hey, this isn't going to be the first and this isn't going to be the last. And it's like, okay, well, even professional athletes, as we've seen with this Ohio State study of, 8 of the 26 19-and-a-half-year-old athletes, male and female, 8 of them developed scar tissue on their hearts. And, 4 of them developed a disease called myocarditis, which is a potentially fatal heart disease. So in all these students were either asymptomatic or mild symptoms, and they all tested positive. So it's one of these things that, and that was in the Big Ten. That's what the Big Ten was using to hold out for a while, but they were also pressured, I feel, too. So the issue is that as it gets colder, we're going to have more and more, cases going on. And, I think the argument, the conversation that I can't really be a part of is just because I don't have the expertise to be a part of it, is this question of, should we force professionals to play football? I think personally, whether we should force amateur athletes like college students to play football, no, absolutely not. But it feels like we are. And so that's kind of my opinion. And things are going to get worse during the winter.
Yeah, so I'm a Seahawks fan, and I'm glad that right now, as we're recording this, 5-0, right?
You guys cheated the last game.
Do you want to rub that in just a little bit more?
But the thing that I'm afraid of is that they're actually going to stop the season. I mean, I can see a lot of people getting COVID, a lot of players getting COVID, a lot of teams getting COVID, and then them delaying the games for such a long time. And just imagine, I was worried because Cam Newton, got COVID, and they had just played the Seahawks.
And Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, the Seahawks players better get checked, because, I mean, it multiplies like crazy right now. So
yeah, I
personally think that they're going to close and not have a season and ruin Russell Wilson's MVP season.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my concern, and my interest is, at what point do the public start caring? And what is it going to take? Is it going to take, how many athletes is it going to take to get sick? Because, let's say that these professional athletes are a lot healthier than most people and all that. Let's say that their mortality rate goes down to, 0.5% versus the standard 3%. I mean, that's still 1 to 200 people in these organizations that, if 1 to 200 people get it, you're probably going to have at least one death. And so, like, I'm kind of interested is, like, which player, if, they get it and die, which are going to be the ones that are going to be the martyrs here.
Right.
And, because they may not care about some bag boy or something, but if Cam Newton or unfortunately, or even Russell Wilson, even being against the San Francisco and get kick our butt, probably, I wouldn't want him to get sick.
Yeah.
But how much is it? Where's the line? Is kind of the question that we'll see.
Do you think it's based on leadership? So President Donald Trump obviously has COVID or had COVID. I don't know what the situation is. You always see him during interviews not wearing masks, right? And eventually, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of discussion between people saying that maybe he actually doesn't have COVID. He just doesn't want to participate in the debate because he had bad ratings during the debate. There's a lot of rumors in that segment. But do you believe that it's based on leadership showing that example? And that's why some people just really don't care.
Yeah, especially in the U.S. I mean, if you look at the countries that did the worst, through this period, UK's Boris Johnson got it very early on, and then immediately he took it seriously, and their numbers went down. But if you look at how this virus has spread, it's spread when a country denies how serious it is. And that's how China, it spread through China because they didn't, take it seriously at first. Now their numbers are great. But you look at the surrounding countries, South Korea, Vietnam, they took it very seriously. They didn't get hit very hard. And then you look at the US and now Mexico and Brazil and a lot of these other countries that aren't taking it seriously. Their numbers are so much worse than every other country. I mean, everyone kind of got that bad initial thing like France and Spain, and you kind of got all those stories coming out, but they were able to take care of it very quickly. We've never taken care of it.
What is your perception on contact tracing?
We need to do it. Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because they do contact tracing for the White House sometimes, I guess. And then they do contact tracing for, these NFL players. And, my feeling about this is that if we took a lot of the unemployed people right now and train them for a week or two, we can turn them into contract tracers, and we would lower our overall numbers just hugely. The two best things we can do is prevention, the two best things we can do are mask and contact tracing, and that's going to be where prevention comes into play. Because I dare you to find me a doctor in any sort of field that says treating a disease is better than preventing it. So it's always going to be cheaper to prevent, and contact tracing is just such a key thing. And it's proven to be so valuable in every other country that's done it.
So your perception is during the wintertime, it's going to get worse. What if you had a blueprint plan of how to make it better? What would that look like?
I think that's gonna be tough on the spot because but essentially a lot of it is wearing a mask and stuff like that, and understanding your surroundings and understanding how the inside is gonna be different than hanging outside. So none of the scientists or researchers were concerned about the summer. All the scientists and researchers were optimistic about the summer because that's when we had the opportunity to get rid of COVID. And we wanted to get rid of COVID because we didn't want to go through a COVID winter. So what happens, there's a reason that November through February is called flu season or cold season. And it's because everyone moves indoors, everyone sees their family, everyone is, generally less healthy by drinking more or, hot chocolate and lots of sugar and desserts and food. And I mean, I do it all the time. So, generally everyone's immune system goes down, everyone's closer and kind of spreading and traveling more. And so that's our biggest concern is, we want everyone to, I think what we're trying to figure out is how can we start moving some of our protections to indoors, because the outdoor thing was great for the summer. And that's why our numbers drop down. But as soon as it gets too cold to be outside, we're going to have problems. So focusing on doing studies indoor and how it spreads indoor.
Well, I want to bring Knock in to the conversation.
Yeah,
real quick,
please.
Because so with your line of work, obviously with, being like a physical therapist and doing the massage, with COVID, have you had anybody that, because I know my uncle got it. My uncle was positive. And then one of the side effects at the end of it was he felt fatigue. He said he had muscle cramps and things like that. Like, have you ever had a client or a patient that you had to treat post-COVID?
Oh, first off, I'm not a physical therapist.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
like,
infringe on that because they are great. No, this is also a personal issue too, and plus it has to do with regulation. And right now, I do limit how many people I see, when I can see them, and in what way I can see them, and it all very much depend on if we're comfortable with one another. For me, you cannot start anything with fear, so it has to start with a basis that creates some sort of trust and understanding. That way we can create a safety for everybody involved and continue. So I work with people in that basis. And so far, I haven't had anybody that reached out to me post-COVID.
Okay, but do you have like a policy or a procedure, like before you see someone? Do you have a questionnaire, or do you have anything
There
like
is
that?
a standards. It's always been there. It's more so. I think it's just a little bit more stringent when it comes to meeting another healthcare professionals, and not just in a wellness setting. It's based through the CDCs, and I also part of the CMTC, so just the Massage Council in California, and their recommendation. So we just follow that type of recommendations, and just pretty much just simplifies everything. If I can set it up so that people can minimize the contact, open door for people. I clean everything afterward. Everybody has their own sheet, it just minimize any type of contact. Don't even do a lot of indoor if possible, or just open a lot of door. We can do indoor now. It's only recently that we're allowed massage, and that's when I start really picking up and doing the movement stuff. I make sure that there are like hours, an hour or 2 hours in between sessions. Just on the safe side, putting the filters on. But pretty much is just to create a sense of safety first.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, right? I mean, for everyone is I think the first thing is everyone's safety, and I think to allude to Jinu's point earlier, politically, like when he brought up, President Trump not wearing masks. I mean, he's holding rallies right now, right? Like he just held one, and I saw that people barely were. I think it was like 50-50. 50% of people weren't wearing masks. I'm pretty sure you're wearing a mask when you're, working on someone. Is that correct? Or do you wear a mask when you see a client?
When I work with, and I do work with seniors there, in that
Oh,
case,
yeah, they're more susceptible.
I do alcohol with them, and we make sure to have the doors open. Always there's some type of outdoor air flowing, and we wear masks because they are very much in touch with their own health care. And so based on what the medical professionals say and support it, we follow that guidelines also.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, because with President Trump, I just feel like, he just got it. He's holding rallies and 50% aren't wearing masks. Like, do you, for you, Ryan, do you feel like right now, since it's also an election year, do you feel like there's no, bipartisan solution of not making COVID a political thing?
Well, I mean, I kind of want to go back to the whole thing with him being infected and whether he's still, infectious. Now, because this was a question that a lot of people asked me was like, how infectious can he be? And I saw something that he was thinking that he's completely immune now. And
Superman.
Did he say? I don't know
Yeah,
exactly.
he said something like that.
Something.
Yeah.
Super
ridiculous.
immune. Yeah,
Yeah,
great,
super, yeah.
great. So the problem with that is that no one's immune, and what everyone should really understand is that when you have antibodies towards something, you're just more resistant. So let's just take a number of 1,000 viral particles to infect you when you don't have, when you don't have any antibodies or you haven't fought off the disease. Well, now it's going to take, maybe 100 or, 10,000 to 50,000. So you're not going to be as susceptible, like you won't get, but you can still get it. And that's kind of one of the issues. And then also there's been some really interesting research that where you've heard of these stories of people getting reinfected after they leave the hospital.
Yeah.
So I was really concerned about that too. And I looked into it. And it doesn't seem like they're getting reinfected, but the virus goes into hibernation and then reactivates. Now the reactivation.
What do you mean by
So it's still in
hibernation?
your body?
Yeah, like what do you
It's still
explain?
in your body. Yeah. So what it does is there's kind of like a gel that holds all of your cells together, and that's called the extracellular matrix. You can just think of it just like a thick gel.
Okay.
And so the virus hides in that gel. and then your immune system and people, test negative and just goes into hiding. And then, 1 to 2 weeks later, that virus will come up, but there's not really any evidence to show that people are getting reinfected. So this reactivation thing is very, very concerning, though. It's in a very small number of people. I don't think that it's going to happen with him, but, it is something to also kind of keep an eye on, is this reactivation. And it's very similar to other viruses like herpes and stuff like that can lay dormant for, will activate and then can lay dormant for, a month or two or, a year.
Are there studies on people that are more active? If they're more active, that they are more prone to getting COVID?
More prone. I don't think that would be a case. Normally, people that are active have better regulation of their immune system, and they're able to dial it down and not have it go out of control.
So when this whole thing started, I started running a lot more.
Yeah.
And I told myself, man, I hope I don't get it, but if I was to run a lot more and be more active, then I probably have a lower probability of getting it. Are there case studies like that?
Like how, so it's no, there's not. Not that I'm aware of, as far as like how easy it is to get it. Now, how severe your symptoms are is completely different. So you might decrease the chance of you, getting severe like cases, or, you'll decrease your chance of being hospitalized and stuff like that. But I don't think you can decrease your chances of getting it. There's so a lot of even the drugs that target the virus and stuff like that, a lot of them you can't use them preemptively. The only thing that you can really use preemptively is a vaccine to build up your antibodies. That's really the only thing that can prevent you from the virus getting a foothold.
So do you feel like with, I feel like President Trump is trying to push all these, companies, to create the vaccine as quickly as possible. I mean, we have Pfizer, Moderna, two of the biggest ones right now. I think both are in phase 3.
Yeah.
I mean, but, clinically, like how quickly can we get it? Because he wants it. He wanted it before election, right? Before November 3rd. But I'm pretty sure we're not. I feel like we're not going to get it until 2022. Like I don't even know how close we are.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the focus of what Knock and I are trying to do, is trying to get out this realistic timeline. So even when what my biggest fear too is that when the vaccine is passed through FDA, whichever vaccine it might be, whether it's Pfizer or any of these other companies, that it's not gonna, people are just gonna go crazy because they're like, oh, we have a vaccine now. And, and that might come, FDA approval might come in December, January even. But there's all these problems with production line, like, making glass vials, transporting the virus, whether the virus has to be refrigerated or not. So, I think the timeline for mass public to get it is still around, fall of 2021. That's probably more realistic.
Yeah, that's like November next year.
Yeah. Fall of 2021 is kind of where I would put it, in the middle, optimistically summer. But yeah, there's going to be, I think Knock and I are going to do a whole 1 hour segment on vaccines and all the different vaccines that are being generated, because it is very interesting. And the vaccines that they're generating are completely new technologies that we've never really tried. So there are going to be those concerns as well.
Would you be on the front line to try the vaccine, or would you be skeptical about the vaccine that's created?
Well, I mean, it completely depends on what vaccine it is, and I'm going a little bit back and forth on this. And but I do know that people from the FDA have threatened to resign if the vaccine is released prematurely. And they have tightened up their regulation despite White House kind of push like, to the White House is not really being too happy with that. So I'm pretty confident in the FDA and whatever they regulate. There are going to be like other questions as far as if it's this new kind of vaccine technology and stuff like that. But, speaking with a few of the people from the FDA, the general consensus is that, and not only the FDA, but, people from Pfizer and all these other companies, what we're really seeing and what's really encouraging for me is that these 9 companies are in phase 3. They're all talking to each other and they're all like working together and cooperating. And these are, companies around the world. And, there's, and some of these companies require the participation of 26 other countries. So this is like a collaboration, even in a very competitive field that I've never even heard of. And they're doing that because they know if one company puts out a terrible vaccine, they're not going to be able to sell it. What's the point of having a vaccine if no one's going to take it? Mm-hmm. So it is encouraging that the FDA is really holding their guns, to their first statements and not being pressured. And a lot of these companies are realizing that, no one can release a bad vaccine, and there's 8 billion people. There's enough people to get some money.
Naka, as you are, following the safety protocols, are there any of the safety protocols where you're kind of like, I wish that they made it more safe for me to conduct business?
See, that is where having a friend like Ryan comes into play.
Yeah.
Because I like to have a lot of the facts available to me.
Yeah.
I like to see everything from different point of views. It allows me to make a decision that's just more informed and keep me steady. And so I talk to him. Mm-hmm. So our conversations that we're going to do with the podcast is essentially the same as me calling Ryan on the phone and asking questions one after another.
Mm-hmm. Is there one in particular where you were like, maybe I should call Ryan and then ask him, is this correct? Or is this safe?
No, not yet, because I don't do a lot right now.
Yeah.
I really scale back on everything.
Yeah.
And there is also, it's like I got it.
Yeah.
But considering that we've been talking since we started our first episodes, recording on Monday here, and there's a lot of information that just went through, and will that shape my decision coming up in the next few months and next years? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the more we're going to start to talk and going into detail about different aspects of the research and the science. Oh my gosh, there's just so many to digest and to understand.
Yeah.
Then we will have a different idea. I will have a different pictures for myself, and it's my hope that for people that listen, they'll be able to have their own understanding too.
Yeah.
Because all of this is very much just based on how many different perspectives can you have, and are there's one that resonates with you or not.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, have you taken a look at some of the safety protocols for businesses to open up?
So I really haven't had that time, because I'm kind of double dipping into my jobs, and most of my stuff is in the science. I have heard of a few business protocols that, especially for restaurants of friends that go out, that are a little bit concerning, or not necessarily concerning, but they're doing that and it's not going to do anything. So I think, there's, I do want to look into that, and we're hopefully going to be doing an episode really soon about, what actual regulations will work and stuff like that. So bringing up the science, though, one of the things that is pretty difficult. And one thing that gets misled a lot is that, media and other things really likes to attach to a single article. And usually these articles are highly reviewed, but right now, because of the speed of the science and because we want to get information out there as soon as possible, no one's really reviewing the COVID research. And so I think that's also a very, very difficult thing for other people to know, what makes a good research paper, because everything is just being published right now, which is, it's great, but it's also not so great.
Yeah. I want to circle back into some of the testing. So I recently, my friend had a birthday party, and what he did was he actually asked everybody to take a blood sample, COVID testing. So it was pretty interesting. It kind of looked like a pregnancy test, to be quite honest. You put your blood in there, and then there's lines, and it will let you know if you have had COVID and it passed, if you have COVID, or if you don't have COVID. Ironically enough, we had one of our friends who actually had COVID and it passed. And then the DJ that he hired was the only person that had COVID, so we didn't have a DJ for his birthday. So he hired another DJ that within the next hour, and he also tested positive for COVID as well.
Man!
So you can see where some of the DJs are playing it too
safe.
Yeah,
right. It's unfortunate for that.
Yeah, but how accurate are these tests? Like, there's the oral, there's the nose. There's the blood. How accurate is it?
Yeah. I mean, this is something that also, it's actually very difficult to talk to. Even scientists, even medical doctors have kind of got this wrong. So my sister's partner went in to go get a test, or one of the people in that group, and the doctor was like, well, I could give you a test, but, they're not really accurate. They're only about 50% accurate. And so my first response was like, well, no, the nose test, if that's the one he's giving you, that's 90% accurate.
So the blood one is 50%, you'd say?
Yeah. So that one is an antigen. Basically, it tests for proteins that the virus left over. Now, the mouth swab one, that one is also kind of looking for that, but that one is the one, I think they were using that to open up the schools just because of how rapidly available the results are. But that's been banned in several other countries, including India, for its inaccuracies.
So why are we
so
doing
the only
it here?
one that, go ahead.
So why are we doing it here?
Is it a moneymaker? Is that what it is?
I have no idea. To be honest, I've been against that mouth swab ever since I've heard about it. So the main difference, though, is the nose one, the one where they stick the thing up your nose and poke your brain. That one tests for viral genome. And if the viral gene, and it's very, very sensitive, so it basically takes that genome, and if it's present, it amplifies it, magnifies it. And so this magnification process makes it very, very accurate. And the experiment, you do need special equipment, but super easy. When the first thing I did when I got into a lab, so I probably did about 10,000 of these PCRs. But that is about 90% accuracy. The blood one is about 50% because you can't amplify the protein of the virus that the virus may have left in. Now, there is one kind of exciting thing that I'm going to be keeping my eye on, and this is a very similar test to the 1-line, 2-line thing that India came up with. It's a new technique called CRISPR. And CRISPR actually won the Nobel Prize this year. And it was one of the fastest Nobel Prizes to be awarded. It was 8 years. In addition, it was 2 females. It was the first time 2 females have been awarded a Nobel Prize without any males or anything like that. So it's really, really cool, amazing technology. And what it allows you to do is it's very similar to the PCR where it tests for the genome, but you're able to put on a piece of paper. And so now you don't need this fancy lab equipment and all this other stuff. And essentially, they're hoping that they can, administer this in a way that you can take it home and do your COVID test at home, and it would only cost like, $6-7 to manufacture. But India still needs to completely test that out. But that would be, I think, as of right now, that's the only test that's comparable to the current nose PCR that you have to wait 48 hours for.
Is that also a nose swab?
Yeah, it would be a nose swab. So that's the biggest problem with these other tests as well, is that they just don't get deep enough into you. Whereas a nose swab really gets in there if you've ever felt it. So the one in India as well is getting that sample that's very, very deep in your nasal passageway. They are actively trying to find a less invasive way to get good, accurate samples, but currently it's a nose swab.
So I have a question. So, we talked about, or Jinu brought up earlier, how, and you also talked about it during, flu season. So do you feel like we're going to have a pretty big second wave, or do you feel like it's going to be contained a little bit? Because like how I mentioned earlier, in the past 7 to 10 days, we've seen cases really drive up. I mean, watching the news earlier today, I think there's 33 states that are currently having an increase in COVID cases. I think like 10 states, or like only less than 10 states are currently just doing the way they're doing it. And there's no states that are actually going down the last like 7 to 14 days. So do you feel like we're gonna have a second or a third wave coming in?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is if you look at examples from our history, the influenza of 1918 and stuff like that, it came back for 3 years and it killed 50 to 100 million people. Right now we're at 210 in the US and I think, over 1 million in the world. So, I really hope I'm wrong and all that, but as of right now, there's no evidence to prove me otherwise. And in my opinion, the best way to not have a second wave is to have the public fight it, because that's who's fighting this on the front lines. I mean, yeah, you have the medical professionals and stuff like that. They're out there doing great jobs and all this other stuff, but the people that are gonna have to prevent this from a second wave and all this is the American people. So unless the American people's attitude changes, yeah, there's nothing stopping it, because like I said, everyone's gonna be indoors. The virus spreads indoors.
What is your messaging to people that don't really care, that don't want to wear masks, that just still want to go out?
Well, I think this is where knock comes in, because my message is that at first was just being angry at like how, because essentially, knowing the risks and stuff like this. And, I think talking to kind of some people that might have been on the fence, it's been very apparent that the way to help those individuals is to kind of just have a simple conversation with them. And a lot of them are misled. And the misleading is that, it's not that bad. It's as bad, it's not as deadly as a flu and all this other stuff. So I've had success with, just like, okay, well, let's do the math together. Let me show you how this is, without kind of talking down to them or trying to be presumptive that like they're stupid or they're being brainwashed or anything like that, because science is difficult. It takes me several hours just to get through a single paper. I've probably read 100 papers on this so far. So, it's not something to easily understand. And I think the message is that it's also, I think the other thing that a lot of those people do is they hear on the news that, the apocalypse is coming and, everyone's going to die and all this. And they look outside and the birds are chirping out their window. So I think the best message is that, we're not in an apocalypse, but currently only 4% of our population has got this. So it can get a lot worse. And, wearing a mask can essentially prevent prevention. If you care about taxes or, paying too much on your taxes, if you care about your businesses and stuff like that, and you want the economy to grow, the best thing you can do is prevent more COVID from happening, which is, wearing a mask.
So, Nog, let's direct the question to you too. What's the messaging that you
definitely had that conversation on Monday. My take on the conversation we have is at what point, there's personal safety and there's community safety, and where is the responsibility in that? It's like how much of the responsibility is on the person and how much is on the community as a whole. Where do we stand in that? And for me, to understand that, then we need to have conversations, from different people, from different backgrounds, to understand where they're from, And if you're gonna have a problem, then you're gonna have to understand it. And I just happen to have a friend that's able to willingly talk with me about that, and we're able to have different kind of discussions and look at it in different ways. So it's about choices. For me, the more information you have, the more you can be informed, and you're able to make choices that is best for you, that you can take the responsibility for yourself and make the decision for your own. And from that point, then you can understand how would that influence the community around you, and what choice can I make based on the information I have that will support the health and the well-being of the community.
So what would you say to someone that, and the question probably can go for both of you, like, what would you say when they go, well, I have to provide for my family, I have to provide for myself, I have to go out there and survive, and the only way I can do that is I have to be in front of people or whatever it is, right? Like how do you advise those people that kind of push back on, it's like, I don't care about this, like I have to live my life because this is the only way I'm going to survive is if I'm out there making ends meet?
That's the question that we also have conversation about. We have a lot of conversation, hours of conversation
because
about
you have
this.
A scientific individual, and then you have like what we're thinking as commoners, right? Like you have facts and you have data. We just go and go.
We just live our life.
We just live our life. So how do you guys balance that?
Absolutely, it's a concern, and we're still working on that. Ultimately, we have our own opinions. I have mine, and Woltz has his. Some of it overlaps, some of it we share. And for me, oh gosh, this definitely is a complex issue because it's talking to society and how society operate, the cultural setting. Each person, each individual person out there has their own perspective, their own belief, and their own experiences that totally inform it. So I do believe that right now we're standing at a point where we are creating a new way of living, a new way of interacting with one another, and depending on how we're going to be looking at this, in what perceptions we're looking at this, then the outlook will be different. So for me, I would like to be informed. I would like to approach this from a point of personal responsibility and community responsibility, from a point of love, from a point of compassion and unity. And all of that is part and parcel with teamwork. And to be able to approach this as a team and to be in a community is being part of a team. So it's like, how can we create with one another? How can we communicate and talk so that everybody can understand one another and knowing their strength, my strength and your strength, and combine this? Because, oh goodness, to tap into everybody's strengths and potential. I do believe that there are so many creative ways in which we can approach any kind of problem.
Are there issues that you both disagree with?
You guys fight about?
Not really.
You said there was like some times where you kind of
like
clash
overlap.
a little bit.
Not even that,
Overlap.
it just, but we talk about that, but see, oh God, it just, we talk. I mean, there are times where we talk for hours, and then sometimes we just come back to, I might understand it. It's just, the philosophy is the same.
Yeah, I think a lot of them might just be like very higher end philosophies and stuff like that. But I think what works great with us and what we're trying to do by leading with examples that, you know, we're very, very open, and, you know, we are completely two different, completely people, blah, blah. But I think what works great is that we do listen to, you know, each other's like kind of problems, and we kind of listen to when someone says, well, you know, I say, hey, you know, if you're going to be, you know, if you don't wear a mask, you're going to be contracting, or, you know, or, you know, if everyone goes out, you know, or sorry, if everyone stays indoors, then we're going to, you know, we can get rid of this in a month. But then, you know, someone else might say, well, I can't do that because I need to feed my family. And it's like, okay, well, let's try and figure out how we can do that, but keep COVID in check. I think that's the overall problem that we're trying to also answer. And so the whole goal also is eventually we're going to have people that are affected by COVID on the show. And we're going to try and figure out how to safely approach their lifestyle for the next year.
I have a question. I want to hear Ryan's take on this. So how would you grade President Trump's response to his post-COVID, you know, treatment, and how he's conducting himself after he got COVID and after he got released from the hospital, and as you see him today?
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, is there F-? Because like the biggest problem with that, and even the company that treated him, the CEO of Regeneron, you can, you know, you can see interviews of the guy from Regeneron basically saying that, you know, this treatment that we gave him is only available to 200-300 people, and we only have it there, you know, until the vaccine is ready. And essentially the whole reason is because it's a very, very technical treatment. It's an antibody treatment. It's very difficult to, you know, generate those and synthesize those antibodies. Other countries have been actually doing kind of interesting things. Well, they'll take antibodies from people that have recovered, like other countries that may not have the medical technology that we have, and they test them, and then they figure out which ones are good, and they can administer those antibodies to someone else to help them. But, you know, for us, we have the ability to synthesize, but we can only really synthesize enough for a few hundred. So yeah, of course, I always knew Trump was going to be fine because he's getting, you know, 20 physicians, treatment. All that. But how many other people are getting that treatment? You know, he said, not me. I would never get that treatment. And, you know,
he said he was being treated by, I believe, 14 physicians total. And then he made a statement that really pissed me off. He goes, you know what the greatest thing about being the president of the United States? I don't know if you guys heard this. You heard this, right? Did you hear about this one?
No.
So he said, you know, the best thing about being the president of the United States is I can have the best doctors treat me, you know, and I had 12 amazing physicians that help and treat me. And I go, what about everybody else?
Yeah.
That doesn't have that access, that are not the president of a country, that can't afford to be treated the way you are being treated, Mr. President.
Well, also, you know, what I really do fear is kind of this nationalistic type view, which is we created this vaccine. We did this, where, you know, any American country is working with 26 other countries so they can test their vaccine to make sure it works in everyone. So, you know, the US is not making anything. It's, you know, the entire world is working on this. And so what's going to happen though, is when we have the vaccine, who's going to get it first, right? It's going to be very, very wealthy countries and all this other stuff. And, then we're going to have very, very sick, poor countries.
Yep.
And so this disparities get, just basically snowball into this even bigger nationalistic, like, oh, well, they're all sick now, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, we were the most infected country. I remember very early on in March, I was at a car dealership and this guy comes up. He's like, oh, it's all these Mexicans coming over the border and blah, blah, and giving us COVID and all that. I'm like, well, Mexico doesn't have any infections. We have all the infections, So that is something that really worries me about the way that he speaks, and also with the way that, oh, don't let it dominate your life. That's also very, very concerning. I mean, I'm not advocating that it needs to dominate your life, but you can't just think you're a big, strong man and not going to get hurt.
Yeah, facts.
Do you also think that because we live in a society where we have access to getting tested, that our numbers are actually more accurate versus in a third world country where they don't really have access?
Well, you see, that's come up so much, but I don't compare the US to any one country. I compare it to the entire world. And when you do it on that level, we're 4% of the population and have 20% of the
cases.
Mortalities, right? Except, well, India is getting really, really bad right now. But okay, so whenever someone makes that argument, it's like, yeah, I guess you could, it's not fair to compare the US to any third world country because of all this testing and blah blah, but we can compare it to the entire world. Like the US is an anomaly. There's no other kind of statistical thing where you can basically say that 1 out of 200 and however many countries are 250, something like that, can't be compared to every other country on planet.
No, that's true. It's just,
and so, but you can easily compare this to Germany. And so when you want to compare a country, the easiest thing is looking at population concentration. Mm-hmm. So when they look at Sweden and other stuff like that, and also travel patterns, those are the two main things. So, when you look at Sweden, when people are trying to compare our, policies and wanting to do the Sweden model or whatever, well, Sweden itself, was kind of in its winter. Who's going to Sweden in February or March, right? No one's traveling there, whereas everyone's coming through the US, coming through New York, San Francisco, these big ports. So, you have to look at travel patterns and you have to look at population concentration. And, so when you compare similar countries to Sweden, they have 10 times the number of deaths as every other Scandinavian country. That's why it's not a good idea to use Sweden's model.
So who should we model ourselves with?
Korea.
Yeah, South Korea, Germany, yeah, stuff like that. South Korea. Right. I mean, but like I said, I mean, this is going to be my personal opinion and kind of uninformed political thing, which is, I think I would be happy for me, myself, who works at home and doesn't really need to risk my life. I'm not essential. Well, I'm still working, but I'm not really essential and stuff like that. I'm not in a high risk group. I'm not going to get it because I'm at home. I'll gladly take a rise in taxes to basically employ homeless people, or not homeless, but a lot of these people that have been unemployed. 300,000, then that's 1 every 1,000 people. And so if you did that, now you can actually use those people as contact tracers and kind of train them for a week and make them contact tracing detectives, because that's the biggest, that's the most helpful thing that the government can do right now, is trying to limit, and isolating people that have been contacted. And that's what Korea is doing. That's what a lot of these countries that have been successful.
People have been against the whole contact tracing because of privacy reasons. How would you overturn that type of objection?
Well, that's just the American mentality. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm serious. Everyone's super happy with their freedoms and all that. And, it's the same argument that people make, like, to not wear a mask is, it's my freedom, blah, blah, blah. But, one thing I would compare this to is, not smoking in buildings. We all agree that, there's probably a few people that don't agree with this, but, we all agree that smoking in a public building, you're subjecting people to toxins and you're subjecting people to potential lung cancer if you're doing that. So there's, legality that, you can ban that because it's a health problem. There's a lot of, and, wearing a mask and other sort of these like public health problems. Yeah, you can absolutely make a law banning this stuff, or enforcing like wearing a mask in public places. So yeah, I mean I guess a lot of people just don't trust the government right now, and I don't really know how to overcome that. But maybe just making a message that, hey, I don't want your grandma to die, so
And I think that's also where I'm torn because like I came from the Philippines, right? Where, we're considered third world, coming in, assimilating myself in the United States. Like I've grown to love that idea of really freedom and individualism, right? Like in when the pandemic happened, it's one of those things. It's like, sometimes right now I'm like, man, do I take that freedom for granted? Like that freedom of thought, the freedom of speech, like that individualistic like lifestyle that Americans live in that are proud of, right? Like when can we like have conversations where that's what's great about America and being an American, but there are times where I feel like we have to step back and go, we really have to think about everybody else. But with social media and the way things are run in this country, it's so hard. And we're seeing it, look at the president. Yeah. It's so difficult to go, okay, maybe I need to think about the person next to me or behind me or in front of me, right? Because growing up in other culture, in the Philippines, in Korea, in everywhere else, I was taught, and speaking of myself, I was taught to go, hey, look at your brother, look at your sister, look at your cousin, and make sure that they're okay first. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how I was raised. It's just, and I'm like torn because I'm like, oh man, but like I grew up here. It's difficult, right?
Yeah. Well, the question I would then ask people is like, hey, you're okay taking off your shoes and going through security and giving, airport security your passport, and they document all of that. So, and why do you do that? Why are you giving up that freedom? Well, you're giving up that freedom so that, people don't hijack planes and, crash them, even though, technically speaking, there's been way less deaths of, people doing that. So, what I think it's, if we can get out the message of like, this is a freedom you're going to be giving up, but this is what you're getting in exchange. You're getting safety. You're getting the knowledge that like, people around you are safe. And I think if we did contact tracing, it would be easier to open up our businesses, so those community shops that you like so much, you can also, like those can start opening now with ease, and people are going to actually go there, because the issue is like, okay, yeah, you can open up as many shops as you want, but if 60 to 70% of the population doesn't feel safe, they're not going to go shop. So it doesn't matter if those places are open or not. That's kind of what I've seen when, they opened up Atlanta, like very, very early. Like no one, the economy got like a 20% boost or something like that when they opened up. It just, and it just risked the workers and really did nothing for their economy.
Well, I do think when it comes to freedom, it's also in the choices we decide to make. When it comes to well, I'm talking from my perspective, from the family perspective, because we do need, we as in my siblings and I and my parents, we have a talk and discussions about it on when and where to wear masks and if the parents should isolate themselves or not. And there comes a decision to be made. And when it comes down, when it's agreed upon that it's about the health of the family, then the freedom you find in this is to be agreed upon, and the choices that we made as a family to put the health involved of everybody involved and the comfort level of everybody involved in terms of safety and security, and well-being. And so when it comes to parents, my parents has stayed inside for a very long time, and I have become the person to buy grocery in the beginning and just drop them off at the house outdoors, just outside the door. Annoying, yes, absolutely, but for me, the freedom is in making the choice for me, and creating that environment when we're able to have our own say in the matter. For everybody in the family, and to understand that we all have different needs, and just be respectful of that and do our best to create a situation where my needs is met, my brother needs is met, and my parents' needs are met.
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed with talking with a lot of people too is when you do, like, you don't overhype things, or you just kind of lay the facts out there in a very understandable way, that they tend to start to understand that, and you're like, this is a real consequence of you doing these actions. Are you okay with that? And most of the time I've had, at least if they're open-minded, right?
I think there's also another thing that we tend to confuse again is freedom and fear. Sometimes where you're in such a heightened state of fear, you tend to protect yourself in a way. It's just a natural nervous system response.
Yeah.
So if you held so strongly a view, and then it got stomped upon, then automatically it feels very threatening. So how do you as a person respond to that? So I think that is a responsibility as a person to keep yourself in a good state of mind, in a good health. I mean, mental health is important in managing stress, and stress is important when it comes to immune system.
Yeah. If you could give our listeners an overall conclusion of a message that you'd like to relay to everybody, and this is for both of you too, what would that message be?
Well, I think my overall message is, try to, not be so fearful, but approach it with some sort of, sensibility to it. Like, I'm not saying that, you need to go out and not let it dominate your life or anything like that. But what I've noticed is that when people approach it without this kind of like hysteria of either it's going to kill me, or that, they're all going to take, they're taking away my rights to breathe and all this other stuff. If you kind of remove those things, then most of the people kind of make the right decisions and make the decisions that are going to keep them and their families healthy, and their communities. And hopefully if everyone does their part, I know it's difficult. I kind of get the feeling that science is very, very slow. Science takes a long time. And with social media and all this other stuff, everyone wants things rapidly. You want that notification, you want all this other stuff. So we've been trained to want things very rapidly. So, take some time, take a breather, and we're good with how things have kind of played out in the US. we are going to have to play this for the long haul and try and make those decisions that will, keep you and your family safe. But honestly, you do need to, pay the bills and all that. So,
What would be your final message for our listeners?
Well, the responsibility, it's always on you to make the choices that best serve you. And so for me, taking care of myself is very important in terms of emotional health and mental health, physical, oh goodness, anything. And to get whatever assistance and support is needed for you to take care of yourself so that you'll be in a good state of mind to make decisions that is best for you and for everybody involved.
Right. Well, every one of our guests that come on our show, we like to support them and we like to promote whatever thing that they're getting themselves into. So, do you guys personally have a social media, Instagram of any sort,
Or a show?
Well, I believe our first episode of our podcast will be coming out Monday.
Oh, nice.
But
and
I already told-
the podcast name is Bourbon and Tea Chats.
Bourbon
Bourbon
and
and
Tea Chat.
Yeah.
and where can they find the podcast?
Well, we're figuring this out, but we're hoping to distribute it to Spotify and kind of any sort of place you can get your podcast. And we'll be releasing a website and some Facebook stuff in the next month. But
Cool.
yeah, the first episodes will be released on Monday.
Perfect. And then, do you have any social media linked up to your podcast yet?
Not at this
yet.
moment. We're trying to get that under construction.
Okay.
That's a cool name,
we're
though.
very beginners when it comes
Yeah.
to the technology world, so
Bourbon and
Yeah.
Tea.
working is good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just kind of highlights how different Knock and I are, but we're still great friends for over 13 years. Yeah.
That's tight.
Yeah,
That's what's
absolutely.
up.
Become teenagers now.
So for our Kickspot listeners, if we're able to put any of their social media links, because we're going to be releasing this within the next few weeks. So by that time, we'll have stuff on our Instagram at _Kickspot. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe, comment, share,
Like.
so that the YouTube algorithm goes in our favor, so that
Yeah.
every time we release an episode, that we're number one on your screen.
That's right.
All right. So
Right now, we're like number 308.
yeah,
You
we're
know?
trying to raise it up
Yeah, to
there.
307
So just
next
start
week.
liking like crazy.
Yeah.
So Ryan and Knock, thank you very
Thank
much.
you, guys.
For being our
This
guests
is a great
here.
topic, by the way.
Yeah, and I think
Hey,
that,
thank you for having us on, man. It was completely our pleasure.
yeah, and I think people are going to get a lot of great information.
Oh, 100%.
And hopefully our listeners will be able to listen to your podcast to get more information, especially in the science realm, things that we're not
Yep.
necessarily the most gifted in explaining.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna go into a lot more detail. Sometimes it might be excruciating detail, but I'm hoping that it'll be fun.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I'm learning to be comfortable with asking very dumb, stupid questions.
It's okay.
That's what we do
all
all day.
Like,
That's what we do all the
off
time.
the baseline.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much
Guys,
for being
thank you
here.
so much. It was a pleasure.
Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Kickspot.